And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink. Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points. No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there. But Coach, we have another half to play. I don't care. I can't stand to be around you.
A few minutes later.
All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that? Yes, Coach? Great. sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3. sterlingsoap.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
That game was just even though I think the first half nobody hardly scored. I think that's the only Super Bowl where both teams went scoreless in the first quarter. But the second half it just turned into a shootout in Houston.
Yeah.
And
they were back and forth, and of all people, Jake Delhomme. Like, what the hell's going on?
You don't talk about the golden boy from Turlin's Catholic, bro. Don't talk about the golden boy from Turlin's Catholic, But Jake Delhomme, man, from David's alma mater, UL Lafayette, from David's alma mater. But Jake Delhomme brought them back, and I was like, I can't believe the Carolina Panthers are going to actually win this game. I really thought that.
It really looked that way. It really did.
Wasn't that the team with Thomas Davis and Deshaun Foster?
Yep, that's that team. Yep.
Okay, I remember that game. And Jake played like a champion that day. He played well enough to win that game, and they came up just short.
Sports from back in the day. From Atlanta, it's Dana on the mic, talking old school legends, bringing history to life. We go deep like a spiral in the Superdome. Back when athletes left the game due to talking alone. Jordan fadeaways, Jackie in the zone, Ali in the ring, man, he stood all alone. From the Negro Leagues to the ABA, we break it all down, the classic way. It's Charles from the district, straight out the boot. Southern University pride, repping truth in the booth. From Baton Rouge to the nation's capital, legends on deck. Yeah, we factual tales of the greats, gold chains and all. Baseball, hoop dreams and that football brawl. No clickbait, no fluff, just the facts we say. It's historically speaking, sports from back in the game. So sit back, tune in, and hit replay. It's historically speaking sports, the classic way.
On January 15th, 1967, on a bright, clear day in the Los Angeles Coliseum, the big question which had troubled the football world for 7 years was answered. For the first time, the Green Bay Packers, champions of the National Football League, played the Kansas City Chiefs, the best team in the American Football League. The game was the first concrete evidence of the merger of the two leagues, and it was played for the highest stakes ever, $15,000 per man for the winning players. The Super Bowl was seen by the largest sports audience in the history of television. 65 million people watching the broadcast on two networks.
What you just heard was the opening lines of the highlight film of the very first Super Bowl in the unmistakable voice of John Facenda. Of the people that attended the first Super Bowl in the shadow of Hollywood, none of them could have imagined how big the Super Bowl would become in the decades that followed. In January of 1967, it was just a game between the champions of both the American and National Football Leagues. Now, here in 2026, it has become America's unofficial national holiday, where a certain number of people tune in to see the halftime show just to see who is the most popular music entertainer of the year is, while others view the game just to see various entertaining commercials where you may quickly forget the product they're endorsing, but don't forget the laugh it may induce or just maybe the cinematography. However, for a good number of people, including the football fans that are featured in this podcast episode, it is the game that still matters. Hi, I'm Dana Augusta, the host of the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, along with my co-host Charles Combs. And in this episode, we're going to be bringing in a couple of friends of ours to talk about our favorite Super Bowl memories. And we will not just talk about our favorite memories, but we will also talk about the best and worst Super Bowls. We will describe the times of our teams reached the big game, and for some of us who was lucky enough to see our teams actually win the Super Bowl. And please stay tuned to the end as we will reveal our picks to win this year's Super Bowl between the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks. We have all of that and so much more right here on the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, the podcast that brings you the best of sports from back in the day, right here on the Sports History Network.
Hey there. Welcome to Music Meets Sports, where sports legends meet custom soundtracks. Founded by music producer Ronald Tyke Oliver, Music Meets Sports was created to bridge generations, educate fans, and celebrate the greatness of both current and former athletes. We craft original songs about heroes in basketball, football, baseball, boxing, and beyond, highlighting their struggles and victories. Across all musical genres, we reintroduce fans to their favorite athletes in a way they've never heard before. From Babe Ruth to Reggie White, from rising WNBA stars to timeless NFL great stream, or download our music now on Apple Music, Amazon, and Spotify. Visit musicmeetsports.org to explore the catalog, hear new releases, and join the movement that's preserving sports history, one song at a time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back here on the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, the podcast that gives you the best of sports from back in the day. I am Dana Augusta, once again, bringing it to you live and direct, and we're heading into Super Bowl week, and this is one of the most anticipated weeks on the sports schedule. And joining us tonight, once again, is my main man, my partner in crime in sports history, my main man, Charles Combs, who's joining us. Chuck, once again, I know it's cold out there. I know it's cold where you are in the DMV. How you doing tonight, my man?
I'm doing all right, man. Just trying to stay defrosted pretty much, man. Been a cold week, been a tough last couple of weeks, but is what it is. Ready to get rolling.
Also joining us tonight is a couple of other cast of characters that have been with us before. Coming to us from Houston, Texas, within his car, Mr. David Bechet. Once again, big time, big, huge Dallas Cowboys fan, and I know we're going to be talking a little bit Cowboys tonight. Dave, I know you're coming to us live and direct. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing just great. Glad to be a part of this podcast once again.
All right,
I'm just ready to roll, trying to fight the cold.
Yeah, is it cold up there? Where you are in Houston?
Well, it's not as cold as it was a week ago. It's starting to warm up a little bit.
Okay, and also joining us today from South Louisiana, our other partner in crime who's been with us a number of times as well, my boy Mark Booty. Once again, Mark, how you doing tonight, man?
Good, man. Just help the wife finish getting the girls ready. Trying to get them out of the way so I can do this. And
all right.
Just getting over a cold, so bear with me.
All right, we definitely would do that, and we know how it is, man. Dealing with a little cold symptoms in this winter, and it's been a crazy winter to say the least. But one thing we're talking about here is Super Bowls and Super Bowl memories that each of us have. And before we start things off, one thing I want to know is, do any of you, and I want to kind of get the ball rolling with this, is that usually we have Super Bowl like a ritual that we go through every year getting ready for the Super Bowl, whether our teams are in it or not. And I know a number of guys, all of us have had a team to make the Super Bowl at least once. Okay, all of our teams have made the Super Bowl at least once. Unfortunately, I am the only one who have yet to understand what it's like to feel like winning a Super Bowl, but all of you have. What was it like heading into a Super Bowl knowing that your team is in it? David, we've mentioned before that your team, the Dallas Cowboys, have been in numerous Super Bowls. And I know it's been a while since the Cowboys have been to the Super Bowl, no offense, but what was it like for you as a Dallas Cowboys fan going into a Super Bowl? What was the butterflies like and that sort of thing?
Well, it was like anticipation. It was a little bit of nervousness. It was a little bit of biting fingernails. Because the last time the Cowboys was in the Super Bowl, I was living in Louisiana, and knowing there was a lot of trash talking going on. The Cowboys ain't this, the Cowboys ain't that, and the last one I couldn't remember was against Pittsburgh, the last one that we played in, and it was a little bit of nervousness going into that game. I wasn't too concerned about the Buffalo Super Bowls, but I had more of a concern with Pittsburgh. They had a good squad that year, and they I believe was no, they fell short the year before when y'all beat them. And then
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, they're gonna come back with a vengeance the next year, which they did, ran throughout the AFC, and it was like, oh boy. Then I remember when they came out, didn't they do an onside kick or something?
I believe, somewhere, sometime in that, yeah, that's right. Like late in the fourth quarter, the Pittsburgh was, I think, were mounting a comeback in that game, and Neil O'Donnell had got hot at least for a little while. They attempted an
Yeah.
onside kick. Dallas got the ball back, and Neil O'Donnell, true to his word, true to what he is, yucked it up for the Steelers, threw another interception to Larry Brown, and then that pretty much sealed it.
And Larry Brown went to the Raiders like the next year, and that was like the last we heard from him.
That's pretty much it, right?
But
Now,
yeah, it was a good feeling that from what I remember, like I say, it's been so long. I only had like one child at the time, and that was like 2 years old, and now she's 31. You know, I mean, it's a lot I can say. We're not really trying to talk bad about, the bad stuff, just talking about what was the feeling. I mean, it was good to say, well, yeah, my team is back in it. Let's get another ring, which we did. I think that score, if I remember, was like 27-17.
I believe that's right. Yeah, I don't have the score
Right.
right in front of me, but that does sound right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, now going over to one of the to our partner that has had a Super Bowl championship in more recent memory. We're talking about Mark with his Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You guys won it fairly recently, with the great Tom Brady at quarterback, and that was kind of like the COVID Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. What was that like knowing that it wasn't going to be the same type of atmosphere that you would see in a regular Super Bowl?
Well, the the Tom Brady Super Bowl was, uh, I remember calling it when Tom Brady came to the Bucks. I was like, "We're going to the Super Bowl." Off top, I knew it. But it was, I mean, the feeling there was nothing compared to '02. '02 was really special for me, because that was their first one. So it was the hype around Tom Brady being at the Bucks and the way our offense was moving, the way the defense was playing, like everything came together at the right time. So I was little, it was Kansas City, of course, but I mean, I wasn't nervous. I think I stayed at home, was playing with the kids, watched the game. It wasn't as big a deal compared to '02. '02, that was really special.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to '02. I mean, this was a team that literally, I'm not going to say they came out of nowhere to win the whole thing, but it was like one of those things where everybody was like looking around and asking themselves, like, okay, the Buccaneers are really in the Super Bowl, like for real, and that's the way I felt about it.
Well,
And
it was. I mean, I think our offense was ranked like 26.
yeah,
Oakland was like first in the league, and there
with
was
the
the whole
MVP, Tom,
with them. Yeah,
with Gannon as quarterback, he was league MVP that year.
yeah, and it was my whole season was Brad Johnson, Brad
Yeah.
Johnson, Brad Johnson, Brad Johnson. We had a decent running game. I think we were 17th in the run, but our defense was stout. But still, I was nervous with going against that Oakland offense. And that was all season long, man. Like, can we move the ball? Could we go to the Super Bowl and actually win with it wasn't so much our defense, it was our
Yeah.
offense. And then we didn't really see life. The offense start clicking till later in the season. So that it was nerve wracking, but that 0-2 was special for me.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching that game and going into the Super Bowl, and I was thinking to myself, like, I mean, again, the Buccaneers are really in the Super Bowl, like seriously. And I think I came in at coming into the Super Bowl, I was thinking to myself, the Buccaneers really do have a chance. Defense usually wins championships, and it's usually, especially the whole thing with the Raiders that happened pregame with the Barrett Robbins disappearance.
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, that's perfect. I mean, that's like the perfect opening for the for the Buccaneers because Barrett Robbins was a Pro Bowl center for them,
Hmm.
and he just turns up missing.
Yeah.
That was crazy, And then of course you got the Saints, Chuck, who's a big Saints fan. That one was probably, and I was nervous along, to be honest. I was nervous along with as every Saints fan because growing up in Louisiana that was something that you never saw coming with the Saints winning in a Super Bowl, much less. And I was nervous as if I was a Saints fan, and for that one day I was a Saints fan, but. Chuck, tell me about what you was feeling that at that night the Saints were ready to take the field in Super Bowl 44 against the Colts.
Ironically, it was a gumbo of emotions, ironically, because I felt relief because I thought that they would lose to the Vikings in an NFC championship game because I looked at the matchup and it just seemed like the Vikings were like a little stronger. So I thought they would lose that game. But, Minnesota kind of helped us out a little bit in that. Then it was like eager anticipation and then slight nervousness, and then by the end of the 2 weeks, it was just straight up anger because leading up in the build up to the Super Bowl, they were just like Peyton Manning this, Peyton Manning that, and the Colts were the favorites, and they were like, well, Peyton Manning, they just had kind of crowned him ahead of time, and it was kind of like they'll be thankful to even be in the game and things like this. So by that time, you kind of get to the point where you're like, okay, man, he's pretty good, but who the hell do they think? Who the hell these people think they are? So by that time, you like, you just ready to get after it. And I had them going into the game winning by 14 because I'm like, okay, there's no way with that Tampa 2 cover 2 scheme because Dungy was the coach. They can't guard us one-on-one, so they were going to have to play that cover 2 shell. So as long as Drew Brees didn't get greedy and stayed patient, they would be able to move the ball. And he kind of executed the game plan because had they came out of that shell and kind of played a bit more aggressively and kind of brought pressure, the Saints probably would have scored 40 on them that night. But I just felt that the Saints would win the game. But then I was also terrified too because they're the Saints, they're the Saints. And even though conventional wisdom had it, I think I felt if they beat the Vikings, they would win it. They're still the Saints, and usually they'll find a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. But happy to be wrong on that occasion.
Well, for me, Super Bowl 29, 49ers versus the Chargers. Okay. I was going in there cautiously optimistic. that we had shocked the Dolphins in the divisional round. We had shocked the Steelers in the AFC Championship game with that goal line stand. And we was going into that Super Bowl playing with house money. Like, you know what? We're here. Let's make the best of it, you know? And a lot of people don't remember this, but the 49ers scored first, and the Chargers came back and scored right after. And I'm like, okay, this might be a shootout. And then reality set in, you know, and Chuck is shaking his head like, you're right. Reality set in. And Steve Young throws 6 touchdown passes, throw for almost 400 yards. You know, the only bright spot in the game was Darian Gordon's, 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown in the game in the second half, after one of the numerous 49er touchdowns in the game. But hey, we got there, and it was also one of the loneliest nights of my life. I've said this a number of times on this podcast, is that I watched the game in my dorm on Southern University's campus. My dorm had like a Super Bowl party, dorm-wide Super Bowl party. Going down into the lobby to watch the game with the rest of the guys that lived in the dorm, was the only one that wore any kind of Charger gear. The only one. Charger hat, Charger sweatshirt. I was sitting there, and I realized right before kickoff that I was the only one in the lobby that wore anything for the Chargers. And I was thinking to myself, either this is going to be one of the greatest trash talking nights of my life or one of the loneliest. And it was. And it was lonely because I sat there to my credit. I sat there and watched the whole game, and took the ridicule and everything else. And even a couple of Saints fans were talking trash. I'm like, dude, at least we made it, which y'all did, So, but that was what I remember from Super Bowl 29, is just being just like, oh my God, we got blasted in our only appearance, and we haven't been since. We've been to an AFC Championship game once since then, but other than that, that was it for us.
Well, I got a couple quick questions.
All right.
A couple for Dave and another one for you. For Dave, you mentioned that you were not nervous for the first Cowboys Super Bowl against the Bills. I don't know how far your fandom goes. I don't know whether or not it goes back to the Tom Landry era or not. But was that your first Super Bowl experience in your Cowboy fandom first? And then secondly, with your success, you had 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. Did you kind of take it for granted? That's the second question for you. And then for Dana, even though you were playing with house money for the Chargers appearance, did you look at it at the time as a building block for future success?
Okay, Dan, I'm gonna let Dave go first on that one.
Well, it was still a little bit of nervousness, but for some reason, I just kind of had that feeling like, oh yeah, we got this. We gonna beat Buffalo and that kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe it was because of how they lost, the year before to the Giants with the missed field goal. Maybe this is just the beginning of a streak of bad luck for them. I don't recall. But I want to say at that time, I was, of course, a fan, and but I didn't start watching Super Bowls until '83, and I don't recall being such a Cowboys fan then, if that answers the question.
Yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for me, did I think that this was a building block on future success? I was hoping that, but I didn't think so. I thought that this was going to be, because I thought that this was going to be like maybe just a one and done, which eventually was. Junior Seau was getting older, as a linebacker. Stan Humphries, our quarterback, was caught lightning in a bottle that season. And plus, he was always hurt. In fact, he got hurt. He hurt his elbow midway through the season. But it was basically the running of Natron Means and the defense that got us there. And then during the offseason that year, if you remember, Chuck, Natron Means was traded the very next year to Jacksonville. And so when he left, that left a big void in our offense, and that basically was the beginning of the swoon, which led us to having the number one pick, which led us to drafting Ryan Leaf, the second pick of the 1999 NFL draft, 1998 NFL draft, I want to say, when Peyton Manning went number one. Um, that also led to us going 1-15 in 2000, and then eventually getting Drew Brees and LaDainian Tomlinson. But us as using it as a building block, I didn't think that was so. I was like, let's try to get what we get now, because I don't think we're going to be back anytime soon. Let's just get what we get. It's good that we're here, but let's get what we can get.
Yeah, y'all were a pretty old team at that time.
Yeah, we were.
And that's the issue with teams like that. And I say that like with the Rams. Stafford's still there, but you ain't got too much more with him. And them teams, man, once they get there, it's hard for them to go back.
Yeah, because to your point, Mark, we the Chargers at the time, we had Sayal, we had Leslie O'Neal, we had a number of older guys along the offensive line. For whatever, we had an older receiver in Mark Say. We had a young guy in Sean Jefferson at wide receiver. But as far as us, we still had Marion Butts at fullback, who had basically was a shell of himself what he was in the early '90s, and it wasn't like a team that you could build on, but at the same time, here it was. We made the Super Bowl and we tried to make the best of it, but we ran into one of the great 49er teams of all time. Okay, anything? Okay, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a quick question. You know how when me and you talk, you was okay. Your boy just said that you had your Chargers had a aging roster at that time.
Yeah.
So you know how when we talk, you always say how the team that loses the Super Bowl usually falls off.
Yeah.
So what was y'all fate the following year after losing going into the next season?
Well, we didn't make the playoffs the next year.
At all?
At all. We didn't make the playoffs at all next year. If I'm not mistaken, we finished something like maybe a game over 500, like 9-7. Which was 2 games above 5. But I think we finished like 9-7, but out of the playoffs. If I'm not mistaken, in '95, the Chiefs had won the division. So
like once y'all made it.
Hey, Dana.
Oh, okay, cool. You fell out. You fell out
fell
for a
out, bro.
second.
Yeah, I know. I saw. I can edit that out. No big deal. Go ahead.
But I was going to ask Dave, like y'all did it 3 times in 4 years, basically. Did you kind of take it for granted that part? You thought it was going to be par for the course, and have you been surprised, or were you surprised that you've had the drop that you've had since?
Well, going into that next season, I can remember me and Dana playing basketball after that season, and when we beat Pittsburgh, and I don't know, I'm sure Dana remembers this, and he said, you know what, the Green, I got a prediction, I'm gonna say it right now, the Green Bay Packers are gonna win the Super Bowl next year, and sure enough, they did, and so we went into all the next seasons with all optimism in the world. Okay, we had, we fell off, but then is this the year we get back on? Then we lose Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith goes to the Cardinals, we lose Michael Irvin, and then it's like everybody just started falling off, and then it's like, okay, maybe we can get somebody in there to turn this team around, and it hasn't happened. So it was just disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. Then we had Quincy Carter, that was a joke. We had Ryan Leaf, that was a joke. It's just all people kind of came in, and then we had a glimmer of hope with Drew Bledsoe. Then he got hurt. Then in comes Tony Romo, and he did a so-so job, but still couldn't get us over the hurdle. And we got Dak, and we still win. So yeah, but to answer the question, I mean, we went into. I ain't gonna say we took it for granted, or I took it for granted. I just thought, okay, maybe one of these years, we'll have some kind of luck in the playoffs, if we even lucky to make the playoffs. But then it's just stupid stuff starts happening. Tony Romo bobbles the a game-winning field goal in Seattle from like the 1 yard line.
Yep.
Just stupid stuff. Yeah, and then more recent years against the 49ers, Dak trying to spike the ball, you, you know,
Wow.
that trying to spike the ball without even letting the refs touch it. That was crazy. It's just stupid stuff happening to us year in and year out. And then people say, well, that's your team. Why are you gonna talk down on your team? I'm just calling it as I see it.
One thing about David that I am sure I am very very I admire him a lot about is that he's a real fan. He's not like these typical Cowboy fans that would just essentially whatever they do, they're going to defend it. And like, who are you to defend? Who are you to say anything about the Cowboys? What your team has done over the last whatever years
Right,
or
right.
whatever. One thing that is one thing I have to give credit where credit is due. David is harder on his team than any non-Cowboys fan.
Oh
And he's
yeah.
been a lifelong Cowboys fan, and he is very hard on his team. He's not like these Cowboy fans that are based that the sun rises and set on the star. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So that's one of the things about David that I enjoy talking to him about the Cowboys because he says it like it is, about his team, which I
Yeah,
really really admire.
you can call us trash, and I say, yeah, I agree. Yeah. And the Lakers too, for that matter. But we're not talking basketball right now.
Yeah, he is a diehard Laker fan too. So
Right.
anyway, we have him back on for when we talk about the finals. But anyway, moving on now. I know for me, I have like a ritual that I used to do every year for the Super Bowl. I don't necessarily do it anymore, but do any of you guys have like a ritual that you do every Super Bowl as far as like getting ready for the game, or there's a certain thing that you do, to get yourself ready for the game? Is there anything that you guys do that to get yourself ready for the game, or do you all just look at it as like, oh, this is just another game, or whatever, or do you guys even have anything like that?
Well, I'm gonna just go ahead and say, I don't really have no ritual. I'm actively involved in my church on Sundays. I just get up, go to church, do what I do. Come home, eat, and then just lounge around until it's game time. It's nothing, no ritual per se, nothing out of the ordinary. It's just another Sunday, to that effect. And then when 5:30 come, I don't watch no pregame, no pregame show. Barely watch the Star Spangled Banner. All I want to know is, hey, when is it game time? Then I flop on my sofa and I'm ready to watch. Don't do no Super Bowl parties. I don't invite people over to the house.
Uh,
It's just like I'm watching any other game on TV.
all right.
That's
Chuck,
me.
okay, but Chuck, do you have anything?
Well, I used to always watch like all of the NFL film stuff because yeah, they used to run all of the Super Bowls.
Yeah,
Like especially all of the good ones like Raiders, Vikings,
yeah.
Vikings, Steelers, Cowboys both times. All the way up to the prior year's football Super Bowl. That's when they had the guy, I don't remember his name, but he used to do all of the NFL narration,
Oh, John
NFL film
Facenda.
narration at the time.
John
Yes.
Facenda, the
So
voice of God. Yeah,
so
John Facenda.
I used to watch that. Then I would watch, they would also have an NFL yearbook for both teams, kind of chronicling the entire season, both
Yeah.
Super Bowl participants. And then I used to always watch I forget the name. I think it was Gillette something matchup that Ron Jaworski used to host,
Yeah.
where he would go through the X's and O's or some things that each team could exploit against the other team and all of that. And kind of similar to Dave, I probably only been to like 2 or 3 Super Bowl parties max in my life because I'm the same way because it's just hard to watch a game with a bunch of people that usually don't watch football.
Right.
And it'd be like, for example, Walter Payton for a 4-yard gain. Somebody say he's not that good. You just like, you know what, man? you know what, man? So I'm with Dave on that. Get out. You know what I mean? So that was pretty much. And and they used to would have NBA games leading up. You remember when CBS had it? They would have during the day before they went to these crazy pre-games. They would have somebody like at 12 o'clock. Dr. J and the Sixers in Boston versus Larry Bird and the Celtics to lead into the game because the game used to start in the afternoon at that time. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much my ritual, if you could call it that.
Right. Mark, do you have anything as far as like any kind of ritual that you would have? I know that you got two beautiful daughters there that it may be kind of hard for you to have like a ritual down, but just tell me
No,
about anything that you may do during the pregame.
I left that long ago. I used to attend the parties and stuff, and what I discovered is I can't watch football with just anybody.
Right.
Um, it's too frustrating, and then the screamers, and I can't deal with all that. So normally, my son he'll come watch the game with me, or we'll be chatting, or my
Yeah.
brothers. But I gotta watch it by myself, man. Because if it's not my team, I have an appreciation for both teams, and
Right.
I really like to analyze the game and enjoy it because it's football.
Right on. I mean, like for me, I mean, to Charles. I know exactly what you're talking about because I used to wake up on Super Bowl Sunday, like at about 3 o'clock in the morning, right? And turn on ESPN and catch the Super Bowl highlight shows, going Super Bowl one all the way through with John Facenda and NFL Films. And it was like, it wasn't the Super Bowl until I watched at least a couple of them, right? And I used to watch those every single year, right, to get myself ready for the game. And then you remember when the pregame show for the school for the game was only like 2 hours long? They'd come on like at about 2 hours before the game. So the game would start at 5. It started at 3. Okay. Now the pregame show starts like Friday night. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, how much can you talk about in that amount of time? Like seriously. How much, I mean, how much, I mean, what can you talk about in that much time, right? So I used to watch that. Of course, and also to Charles's point, there was always like a very big NBA game on that afternoon to lead into the game, whether it was the Celtics Sixers or the Knicks and somebody or something like that, or the Lakers going to Madison Square Garden to play the Knicks, or the Lakers and Bulls or something on NBC. It was always like a really, really good NBA game on, and that would lead you right into the Super Bowl halftime, the Super Bowl pregame show, which was at the time very condensed, very to the point. And then the final half hour of it was the team intros and then the national anthem, which I think you kind of miss. I kind of miss that. Like when the Super Bowl pregame show was just like this really condensed thing. Now it starts like Friday, like Saturday morning. They're reporting from the stadium, and you see them painting the field and what's not. Like, okay, why are we here, and what are we talking about? You know what I mean? Which is one of the things that I just don't care about, like the way Super Bowl coverage have mutated into, so to speak. You know what I mean?
What else do they talk about? Do they have pregame concerts? Because the
Yeah, I
sports
think they
you
do. They
guys,
do. I think they do have like a pregame concert or something that they go to back and forth.
but I disclaimer to the three of you and our listeners. Last Super Bowl I watched was, I want to say, 2017 season. Must have been early 2018. That was the year the Eagles beat the Patriots. That's the last Super Bowl I've seen.
Right.
I haven't watched the Super Bowl since then because it seemed like everything, like for example, like you try to watch the game, and then obviously the network that's doing the game, they're trying to take advantage of having the game on their network. But it's the middle of the play, and then they'll say, "This is so and so star of this show that comes on Tuesday night," or what. It's not going to make me watch the show. It's not. Get him off my screen. And it's like they do all of this
Right.
cross promotion, which I understand, or they really put an emphasis on the celebrities. What they eat don't
Or
make me
what they
crap.
used to
I
do,
don't
Chuck,
care.
or what
You
they
know?
used to do is like they used to have like a premiere of a show after the game. Remember
Yes.
that?
I remember the Wonder Years. One of my favorite shows
Right.
premiered after the Super Bowl one year, but they didn't have them all during the game, cutting away from the game to
Right.
speak with them. And I understand it from a promotional standpoint, but both to the three of your points, it's like the championship game. It's about kind of football is almost secondary, almost.
Yeah,
As
and
far as the
I see
viewing
what you're
experience.
talking. I see what
You
you're
know,
saying because the Super Bowl. A lot of people watch like me. A lot of people that are just layman people that are just not really that interested into the game itself. A lot of them just watch the game for the commercials. You know what I mean? And you only see that commercial maybe once. You know what I'm saying? Just once, maybe twice, ever. I'm talking about not even after the game. Like in just a regular television watching. You only see it like maybe that one time. And everybody's talking about the Super Bowl commercials. Like, and I would get to one Super Bowl where the halftime show over like the Super Bowl halftime show, this one particular Super Bowl got more talk after one of the greatest Super Bowls ever that no one talks about. You know what I mean? So that does happen, and that's one of the things about the Super Bowl that I wish was not the case. You know what I mean? So
a question perhaps for all three of you. Have you ever, or not hypothetical, what do you call that? Rhetorical. That's what
right.
I meant. Has a Super Bowl commercial ever implored you to purchase anything?
No.
No.
Hell no. Maybe watch a movie.
Watch a movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember doing a Super Bowl was the trailer for Independence Day. Now, when I saw this trailer for Independence Day, I'm like, I gotta see that.
Okay.
That's still one of my favorite all time favorite movies is Independence Day. Still, it will come on TV right now, and I will sit down there and watch it. So and that was the trailer was premiered during the Super Bowl, and I'm like, oh yeah, I have to go see this.
I've never
That's the
watched
only
it.
thing.
Hey, I've never seen it. Wow.
Really,
Yeah.
you've never seen Independence Day?
Oh my
No, when
God.
that was out, man, we used to be out hooping.
I know, man, but then I mean, come on,
Man.
we want Hooper 24/7, Chuck.
Yeah, ain't that much hooping in the world.
And then the rest of the time, if I wasn't doing that, I was either at church or on the ladies, one or the other, man. So So
Okay. This is your appoint. This is your assignment for the before our next episode. You have to watch
Okay.
Independence Day. You have to watch it. Don't worry about the second one. Just watch this one. Okay. The second one I didn't care for, but the first one, yeah, you have to watch that.
Okay, I got you.
All right, moving on. I'm gonna ask everybody this, and we're all kind of close in age. What is your earliest Super Bowl memory? Like the first Super Bowl you remember watching? David, you had mentioned your first Super Bowl was in 1983, which had to be with the Redskins and Raiders.
Yes.
What do you remember about that game?
Nothing specifically about the game, but that was the first football game, shall I say, that introduced me to football. Because I remember going into our den, and I remember my dad and my sister in there watching it. I'm like, "Oh, what y'all watching? Oh, this is Super Bowl. Super Bowl? What's that? Oh, it's a game where two teams are playing for the championship." And I just sat there and watched it. Don't remember who hardly played. None of the players hardly, but I just remember that's what. So and I'm sitting there like, "Oh, that's football. Okay, so when this game is over, when is the next one? Oh, not till next year. You have to go through the whole season. That's when the it was starting to get explained to me about how the season works, like it's the last game of the season. You can't ask me anything about what led up to the Super Bowl or that year or anything about the regular season because I just wasn't into it. And I was just like I said, just went into that particular room in the house and just sat down and watched and asked a couple of questions. I just sat down and watched the game, and for some reason, I just remember the score being 38-9 in favor of the Raiders.
Yeah, the Super Bowl he's talking about, Super Bowl 18, Raiders versus Redskins.
Hmm
38-9, Marcus Allen, Super Bowl record 100. I think he had something like close to 190 yards rushing, if not right at 190. Two touchdowns, Super Bowl MVP. The Redskins, a lot of people consider that Redskins team the best Redskins team ever, up before, doing the Joe Gibbs era. Um, they went, I think they went 14-2 that year. The Raiders the Redskins were heavily favored in that game to beat the Raiders because they had met earlier that year, and the Redskins beat them in Washington in a very high scoring game for what I remember. But I remember that game mostly because my dad was a big Raider fan. Now that was my first Super Bowl. So 1983, January of 83. So you were what? How old were you?
8. I was 8, getting ready to
Oh,
make 9.
okay. So 8-year-old, 8-year-old about to make 9. That was like your first Super Bowl memory. Mark, what about yours? I think you're the youngest of the group. What was the first Super Bowl you remember?
It was the Bears Patriots, Super Bowl 20.
Yeah, we just talked about that, Chuck, in our Super Bowl in our one of our recent episodes when we talked about the '85 Patriots. But yeah, Super Bowl 20. We both remember that one.
Yeah, and I mean, as a kid, I remember it was the Bears were everywhere, man, with their song, Refrigerator Perry, like they were so commercialized, man, you couldn't help but like the guys. And that was the first game I actually watched. I actually was able to sit and watch, and enjoy.
Okay, Chuck, what about you? What was your first one?
I have a vague memory, and I have my first vivid memory. Like my first vague memory was I was 3 going on 4. It was the first time I ever heard my dad cuss. It was the first time I ever heard my dad cuss.
And
It was
those of you who don't know, Chuck's father is a preacher. So
you
just to
know
put that in that
first
perspective.
time I heard my pop cuss. Right? It was Cowboys Steelers. Super Bowl, which one was it? The one is Super Bowl 13. And he was a big time Cowboy fan. And I remember him saying, "That's sorry, mother sucker," when Jackie Smith dropped the ball that would have tied the game against the Steelers. I vaguely remember that, but my first vivid memory was Super Bowl 16 49ers versus the Bengals, which they won when they had the big time goal line stand. They kept Forrest Gregg kept trying to run Pete Johnson into
Yep.
the goal line, and they stuffed them. And then that was the first Super Bowl where the team that was outgained in terms of yardage won the game. That was the
Yeah.
very first time that had happened. So Super Bowl 16 is my first vivid memory, but I have a small recollection of that particular play because the first time I ever heard my dad use profanity.
Well, I have like a lot like with you. My first vague memory was Super Bowl 14, which was the Rams and Steelers in Pasadena in January 1980. The vague memory was that I really wasn't really paying attention to the game, but the thing I kept hearing my dad say over and over again, and my dad despises the Steelers. And the Rams was just every time the Steelers did something, the Rams countered it and took the lead in that game. And he kept saying, "Watch, the Rams are gonna win this game. The Rams are gonna win this game." And I still think, if I'm not mistaken, the Rams had the worst record of any team ever to play in the Super Bowl at 9-7. But they made the Super Bowl that year, and behind with a backup quarterback and Vince Ferragamo, they they had the lead going into the fourth quarter, which a lot, and that's like a really good game that a lot of people don't remember of it being a really good game. Yeah, the Steelers scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to put the game away, but it was really close for 3.5 quarters. It was really close. Now, my most vivid memory is the following year is Super Bowl 15, Raiders and Eagles. And of course, my dad was a big Raider fan, and he was going up and down, and Jim Plunkett was his favorite player, and that was and some of you guys that's history buffs out there, American history buffs. That was the day that the Iran hostage crisis ended, when the hostages in Iran that was held hostage for 444 days were finally released, from captivity, and it was released. They were released on Super Bowl Sunday, and that was like major news, like all over. And they had the game was in the Superdome, and they had these big yellow ribbon around the Superdome, in celebration of the hostages being released. But the one thing that I remember about that game was, like, I think it was either the first or the second quarter, when Jim Plunkett threw a pass to Kenny King, and he ran it 80 yards for a touchdown, and my dad was essentially running with him in the living room. Okay. And and Jim Plunkett threw 3 touchdown passes, named MVP, and my dad was beside himself the whole day, and he kept saying, "We're champions again, we're champions again." And I had to live with that man ever since. He still talks about that game as if it happened yesterday. Trust me. Every time I bring it up, we talk about that. In fact, I talked to him earlier today, and he was like, "I know you're going to talk about the Raiders, right? I know you got to talk about the Raiders." And it's like, "Of course I am. Of course I am." So that's my earliest Super Bowl memory, is Super Bowl 15.
Ooh. Slightly outside the scope of the conversation, but briefly for Mark. If you said Super Bowl 20 was your first experience, what was the genesis of your Buccaneer fandom then? Or when did you become a Buccaneer fan? Because usually fandom starts in conjunction with a Super Bowl appearance or something.
Well, no, like I said, where I'm from, everybody's a Saints fan. He's a Saints fan, LSU fan, and being the youngest of full boys, I didn't want to be my brothers. So and I remember watching, who was it? I remember a lot of the Florida State players started coming and playing for Tampa. So it was like, because I think that's around the time Warren Sapp got drafted and went play at Tampa. So it was easy pickings for me.
Yeah. Mark is a huge, not only a Buccaneer fan. I think he has like some roots in Florida some kind of way, because he's also a Florida State fan. He's a big Seminole fan too. So, he's like a lot like me, like, not only am I live in Atlanta, I grew up in Louisiana, but, most of my, the team, like my favorite football team is the Chargers. And I gravitate to California teams and West Coast teams and stuff like that. But, that kind of, and David's the same way. I kind of think we talked about this earlier in our last episode that we all did together, that David was started off, kind of his cowboy fandom has been long lasting, just like mine is the Chargers, it's been long lasting. Okay, anything else that y'all want to touch on before we move on? Okay, now I have this next one is, I know that we're going to have a lot of going back and forth on this, but this is just, I want to get everybody's opinion on this. What do you consider the best Super Bowl ever? The best Super Bowl that you've ever watched? That if you could sit down right now and watch that game all over again from the start, what would you watch? David, I'll start with you.
If I could watch another Super Bowl again, I would say Falcons Patriots from that year, because if it's one thing I love in any game, whether it's football, basketball, and I'll even say baseball, is I love comebacks. When a game just seems out of reach and a team just comes from out of nowhere and to come back and win a game, because it's like that game, the Falcons was up like what, 29-3 at halftime?
28-3.
28-3.
28-3 in the fourth quarter.
Right.
No, it wasn't 28-3 in the fourth quarter. It was 28-3 at halftime. the Falcons got the ball first, went 3 and out. The Patriots, I think, scored a field goal. I have
Oh,
to
I
look
thought
it
it
up real
was
quick.
in the fourth quarter. My bad. My bad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but
no,
if it's one thing I love is comebacks. Just like the game, the 1993 Bills and Oilers, same thing. You
yeah,
know how the Oilers just messed that up when the Bills had a backup quarterback. Nobody saw that coming. And so if it's one game that I can think of off the top of my head, I wouldn't mind watching again. I would say that one.
yeah. I mean that game here. I mean, I watched that game with a group of people, and I had just moved to Atlanta a few years earlier, and they were basically celebrating at halftime. They were celebrating at halftime that they had won their very first Super Bowl, and it was 28-3 at halftime. It was, let's see, at the half it was, I'm looking it up right now. It was 21-3 at the half. The Falcons scored on the first drive of the second half to make it 28-3. Okay. Going into the fourth quarter, the Patriots had just scored going into the fourth. So going into the fourth quarter, it was 28-12. Okay. So the Falcons essentially had the game won. Okay. And I could remember saying, y'all need to keep scoring. Y'all can't rest on your laurels now. Y'all have to keep scoring. And sure enough, the Patriots came back and won. They were so upset after the game that some people were basically about to say, you know what, I'm done with the Falcons. And these are people that grew up here in Atlanta their whole lives, okay,
Hmm.
and had been Falcon fans their whole lives and say, you know what, I'm done with these fools. You know, and it was that bad. You're gonna come all the way here and get us this close. And it's like I mentioned in another episode one time, I almost got into like a little bit of a fight at a barbecue once because I made a joke about the Falcons. And this one guy started talking all kind of smack about the Falcons and all Atlanta teams. And I was like, you know what? Do you know what the word Atlanta means in the Cherokee language? And he's like, no, what does Atlanta mean? It means blown leads. That's what it means. You know, so so he didn't appreciate that too much, when I made that joke. Mark, moving on to you, what do you think was the best Super Bowl?
It's probably between two, and I know y'all gonna probably dig on me because it's my Bucks.
Yeah,
Uh, of course, the O2 Tampa, and it would probably be the next year, the New England Carolina Panthers. That was a
yeah,
good game. That was a really good game. To say that I had no stake in it, actually I was playing. I play college football on Xbox, and while I'm playing, I usually got like the old games playing, and that game was on.
wow. That Carolina Patriots game, of course, was overshadowed by that wardrobe malfunction of Janet Jackson.
Yeah,
And a lot of people don't remember how good that game was. Okay, it came, a lot of people don't remember Jake Delhomme, had a last minute drive to take the lead, with like what, about a minute left, less than about 2 minutes left. Okay, and then Tom Brady, all he had to do was get in the field goal range for Adam Vinatieri to kick a field goal. But that game was just the even though, like, I think the first half nobody hardly scored. I think that's the only Super Bowl where both teams went scoreless in the first quarter.
hmm
But like the second half, it just turned into a shootout in
yeah.
Houston. And
They were back and forth, and of all people, Jake Delhomme. Like, what the hell's going on?
you don't
Um,
don't don't talk about the golden boy from Turlin's Catholic, bruh. Don't talk about the golden boy from Turlin's Catholic, But yeah, but Jake Delhomme, man, from David's alma mater, UL Lafayette, from David's alma mater. Um, yeah, but Jake Delhomme brought them back, and I was like, I can't believe the Carolina Panthers are going to actually win this game. I
yeah,
really
it
thought
looked that
that.
way. It really looked that way. It really
What
did.
wasn't that the team with like Thomas Davis and Deshaun Foster?
Yep, that's that
Yep.
team.
Okay, I remember that game. I remember that game, and Jake played like a champion that day. He played well enough to win that game, and they came up just short. You know,
Okay, Chuck, since you are, what was your favorite Super Bowl, or
my favorite
the Super Bowl that you think is the best one?
Super Bowl was Super Bowl 22. Niners over Bengals.
That's
Niners 20.
23. That's
Um,
23.
yeah. And Bengals 16. That's the John Candy game.
Yeah.
When they were Bengals were clinging to a 16-13 lead late in the fourth quarter, and the 49ers got the ball at like they own 15, somewhere around there, and they were all panicked in the huddle, and John Candy was standing all the way behind the end zone that they had to drive towards. And Joe Montana just looked and say, "Look at John Candy sitting over there laughing and smiling and all of that." And that loosened everyone up. And he matriculated the ball down the field. Brent Jones, Jerry Rice, of course, Roger Craig, John Taylor, and culminating with a touchdown slant to John Taylor with under 30 seconds left.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching that game, and I'm gonna talk about that game a little bit later because I have a personal story about that game. Um, but yeah, that game there. That was another game where I really thought the 49ers were going to lose that game because it just seemed like every time the 49ers did something, the Bengals came back with Boomer Esiason and Icky Woods. That was the Icky Woods year. They came down the field and scored every time the 49ers were scoring. It was a low scoring defensive type of game. And Joe Montana really couldn't do much, even though he didn't throw an interception. That's the only Super Bowl that Joe Montana ever played in where he was not MVP. Jerry Rice was the MVP. Jerry Rice had 12 catches for like 150 yards receiving in that game. I mean, he just had
I
this
think it was over
crazy day.
200.
Really, it might have been. It might have been over 200
Yeah.
yards. You're right. Now that you say that, I think it was over 200 yards. And that was just wild, crazy, especially that last drive was just incredible. You know?
Correct. And to your point about every time the Niners would do something, the Bengals would come right back. The Niners took the lead, remember, and then they kicked the ball off to Stanford Jennings, and he
Yep.
ran it all the way back for a touchdown. And usually if you have a non-offensive touchdown, your chances of winning are usually like upwards of like 75 to 80%
Yeah.
most of the time if you have a offensive touchdown, and they just defied conventional wisdom and pulled it out at the end.
Yeah. My favorite, I have actually two. Okay. The first one was Super Bowl 25, Giants Bills. Came down to the last second field goal. Scott Norwood missing the field goal at the end. That particular Super Bowl, I remember because I had the flu that night. I had the flu at that Super Bowl. I was supposed to go to a Super Bowl party, didn't go, but because I had the flu of 102 that morning, so I basically was sick all day watching that game. But that game was so good, Only Super Bowl not to have any turnovers. The smallest margin of victory, 1 point. It came down to a last second field goal. Otis Anderson, the Giants held up. It was like the irresistible force, which was the Bills' K-gun offense against the immovable object, the Giants' defense. It was just such of a contrast of styles. And Chuck, as a fight fan, you understand there's good fights. Styles make good fights. And this was a total contrast of styles. The Bills, you had Andre Reed and Don Beebe and James Lofton and Thurman Thomas offensively and Jim Kelly running the K-gun offense. The defense, the Giants offense, you had Jeff Hostetler and Otis Anderson and Dave Meggett and Mark Bavaro. It wasn't like they weren't going to set the world on fire offensively, but it was they just had this ball control style offense, plus the defensive coordinator and Bill Belichick, who came up with this unbelievable defensive game plan where they just had 2 down linemen, 1 linebacker, and all the rest defensive backs to counteract the K-gun. And it worked. It was just such of a defensive alignment that was just so unconventional. And it worked, which led to the genius of Bill Belichick. The other one was Super Bowl 34. The Titans Rams coming down to the last yard. People forget that if the Titans would have scored, that would have gone down as maybe one of the greatest drives in NFL history, especially one particular play when Steve McNair, that Chuck, you and I have seen this, watching Steve McNair when he was at Alcorn. It gave like a little reminder of what he was at Alcorn State. The Rams had him on one particular play where he eluded like the entire front seven of the Rams defensive front and was able to complete a pass for a first down to keep the drive going. And I was like, that's Steve. That's Steve. That's what we've been watching at Alcorn, you know. But it was such a, everybody talked about the Kurt Warner story, and he threw for a Super Bowl record. I threw for over 400 yards in that game. The pass to Isaac Bruce, they gave him the lead, and then it was the greatest show on turf. And then the Titans drove down the field, got to the last play, and then Kevin Dyson, little slant over the middle. Mike Jones makes the tackle at the 1 yard line. I thought that's by far the greatest finish in Super Bowl history, by far.
Mm-hmm. And if I could jump in, if I could name a second one, I would say that year with the Seahawks and the Patriots.
Oh my God, Super Bowl 49,
49, right. When Seattle drove the ball down, and we all know how this ended. Giving it to Marshawn Lynch, and he busting through the line, just doing what he needed to do. Then everybody's probably still wondering why a pass play from the 1 yard line that lead to the Malcolm Butler interception.
Man,
didn't me and you talk about this the other day, Dana?
Yeah, we did. We talked about that very thing the other day, right, Dave? Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah. Well, like Dana and I have talked about numerous times, like a lot of these games that we are recalling, and especially the one you just brought up, Dave, more times than not, more games are lost than are won. Like a lot of times these guys, they just want to be smartest guy in the room. And a lot of times the smartest solutions are the simplest solutions. Like just run the ball 1 yard. They throwing a slant and got it picked off. And then, like, for example, the other game you were talking about with the Giants and the Bills, right? Like, yeah, they slowed the K-Gun offense down, but they scored 19 points in 19 minutes. But kind of similar to how we were talking about the Patriots a couple of episodes ago of how they played defense kind of offensively with all of the forced turnovers and the touchdowns. In this instance, the Giants offense kind of played defensively because they controlled the ball. They kind of played in concert with their defense to limit the opportunities that Buffalo had. Because, you got to think about it. A point per minute is pretty good production. But they shortened the game so much and limited the opportunities. They had it 41 minutes to just 19. And Otis Anderson, who was past his prime, but could still move the pile, they were just chunking them up 3 or 4 yards at a time. And it's just like a lot of these teams, they lose more games, even the 28-3 game, Kyle Shanahan, right? Just, you remember they were clinging to an 8-point lead or something like that. Yeah, they had an 8-point lead in New England territory in field goal range. He 3rd and 10, he goes shotgun. They get sacked, fumbled the ball. They get it. Brady goes down, score, get the 2-point conversion, force overtime. That's just coaching. They lost that game more than the Patriots wanted. So, like a lot of these coaches, they just kind of overcomplicate things sometimes.
Right.
Okay, now we've said our best Super Bowls, the Super Bowls that we love the best. Now we got to go to the other side of the coin. Worst Super Bowl. What did you consider? Excuse me. What did you consider the worst Super Bowl ever? I have a couple down here, but Davis, to start off with you, what do you think is the worst Super Bowl? And I think we may be all in agreement in this one, but I'm just curious to see What you guys think?
Well, I'm not gonna call this the worst Super Bowl, but one Super Bowl that I thought was absolutely boring was the first time when the 49ers played the Chiefs.
Okay.
That Super Bowl, I think the score was like 31-20 or something like that when the
Yeah.
Chiefs won. But it was something about that game. I'm like, oh, I'm trying to keep my eyes open and trying to stay awake. But if I'm trying to recall something. What wasn't it like some kind of last play that or kind of last second play Mahomes did at the end of that game to put that game out of reach?
I kind of remember. I kind of remember that the final score of that game started 31-20. Mahomes was MVP of that game.
Right. But
And
I'm not gonna say it was the worst in my opinion. But like I said, it was just to me it was just one of a boring Super Bowl to me.
yeah. Okay.
Go ahead, what
Mark,
you were saying?
you know, Mark, what do you have? Your worst.
Got to be Super Bowl 35.
You're talking about the Ravens and
Baltimore.
Giants.
Yeah.
Ravens and Giants. That was a terrible Super Bowl. That's not on my
Yeah.
list, but it's a bad Super Bowl because the Ravens, the Giants were never in it.
No, at all. They were outmatched, and it was a wonder that they were there.
Yeah.
And I just remember just thinking, like, what am I watching?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been there before. Not with this particular Super Bowl, but I remember it was one of those Super Bowls for me that I was glad I was at a party because it distracted me from the game. The game just became background noise for me. It was just a bad Super Bowl. The Giants, believe it or not, if y'all guys remember, the Giants blasted the Vikings in the NFC Championship game that year in the Meadowlands, and a
Yeah,
lot of
41 to
people.
nothing, right?
Yeah, it was 41-0. And I really thought that, okay, this may be a really good Super Bowl here because you got two teams, two defensively centric teams that are playing each other in the Super Bowl, and this may be a really good game. As it turned out, not so much because the Giants' offense, of course, led by Kerry Collins of all people, you know, they just couldn't get anything started offensively. Like seriously, they just couldn't get anything done.
It's going to be my next question. You entrusted Kerry Collins, man.
Well, I didn't trust him, but I was like, at least they got a. I mean, like Kerry Collins to me was like he was like, and I don't want to jinx this year, but I don't know. I have the feeling that Sam Darnold might turn into Kerry Collins. I don't know why, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm afraid that it will happen. So, Mark, you said Super Bowl 35 was yours. I mean, that was like one of, you know, as a, with the uh, Raiders defense, that year was just like ranked right up there with you know, the 85 Bears. And that
Yes.
Ravens offense was maybe I don't know if they would have won without that defense because you
No.
had two subpar quarterbacks in that game. You had Kerry Collins on one side and then you had Trent Dilfer on the other. And it was like this was going to be a very defensive, low scoring, hands in the dirt type of game. Do you think? I mean, I really think that was what I think was what if the Ravens didn't have to go against Kerry Collins, I didn't think that offensively that Trent Dilfer was going to be able to get it done. Not a
No.
quarterback.
No.
Absolutely.
Not at all.
No.
No.
No, I mean, could you really say? I mean, like, who do you think was like the worst quarterback to play in the Super Bowl? Outside of maybe Stan Humphries. Okay, but
Worst quarterback to play in a
Chandler.
Super Bowl.
Chris Chandler, yeah, that's one. Chris Chandler.
And see, that's another point I hope I get a chance to get to because I think around 99 through the 2000s, and I think we're having another resurgence like that. But we kind of just had a bunch of quarterbacks in the league. They were good. There was no greats. Like
Right.
we passed the eras
Brady and
Elway,
Manning and yeah.
Elways, and then Brady and them came in. But you had that gap where you had like I'm a, Elvis Gerback, Mark
Yeah.
Brunell, who else? Mark Balger, Kerry Collins, Steve Berline. I know Dave's gonna know that name.
Scott Mitchell.
Yeah,
So
Scott
I mean,
Mitchell.
you had a lot of guys in the league that, yeah, they were NFL quarterbacks, but like they were forgettable guys.
Yeah.
Like nobody's comparing any quarterbacks to those guys, even though they had, Drew Bledsoe. I mean, he went to the Super Bowl. Jake Delhomme went. Chris Chandler went. Matt Hasselbeck went. I mean, but
Right.
and I think we're having a resurgence of that in the league now. We have a lot of guys that are good, but they're nowhere close to being great.
Right. I mean, yeah, to your point, Mark, you're absolutely right. I mean, like you got this year, this year's quarterback. You got Sam Darnold, who was, as I told David, like earlier this week, he and I talked. At one time, he was with the Jets seeing ghosts. Okay. Now he's in the Super Bowl with Seattle. Okay. And maybe this is maybe one of those situations where he's like a Jim Plunkett, where he's like in the exact right situation after years of being discarded by the other teams, you know, or, he may be one of those quarterbacks like a Mark Rippon who just happened to be in the right situation at the right time, caught lightning in a bottle, wins the Super Bowl, and then rides off into the sunset. This may be something that may be happening right now. Um,
Well, it's
you know,
happening all over the league. I mean,
yeah, right. It is all over the league.
I mean, I told y'all earlier as a Bucks fan, I like Baker, but he's to me he's not the guy. Come out throw for 500 in one game, and then he's throwing the ball like he's fucking Edward Scissorhands.
Right.
I don't get it, but he's got to be a little more consistent. And I love the guy. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. I see it throughout the league more now, where you got a lot of guys that came in hot from college, and I don't know if it's they starting them too soon, they can't get their footing, but there's a lot of good quarterbacks, but none that that I could start comparing to, a Troy Aikman, a John Elway, a Brett Favre, or a Drew Brees,
Yeah.
which you Saints fans, you might want to talk to your people. You're never getting another Drew Brees. Let it go.
We might have found somebody, but we need he's earned the right to go on the next season as the number one guy, and I'll leave it at that. As far as whether or not we got the guy now, jury is still out. The jury is still out, man.
That's how everybody sees football. Everybody. The next quarterback come in, is he Drew Brees? Or is this gonna be the next Tom Brady? And we don't have those guys right now. And they need to get a little more time under their belt with as fast as these offensive schemes have become and unique. It's very hard, and we've seen it everywhere. So you got Josh Allen. I give him 2 more years at Buffalo. And some of the other guys that's been around, 5 and 6 years. It's changed so much, but it's hard to put to point a guy out and say he's going to be great. And it just feels like the year 2000 all over again.
But do you think it's an indictment though? Because the way the rules, I understand what you mentioned about the RPOs and some of the seemingly complex schematics, but from the rules in terms of how the game is played, it's easier than ever now because the defense basically has to play with their one hand tied behind their back.
Right.
And
yeah.
If you can't hit the quarterback a certain way, you can't hit the receiver a certain way. So if you can't make plays under those circumstances, how bad are you if you can't make plays when everything is kind of tilted in your favor to succeed?
Well, I mean, look at these coordinators, man. They're gifted guys, but and I remember going through this at Florida State, watching them. They went to a pistol, then they went to the RPO, and sometimes you just got to get out there and play football. I
Yeah.
mean, some of these guys play calling is you hear it, it's ridiculous, man. Um, I don't know if some of these guys just can't get it, or they're overthinking these things. But simple football is the best to me.
Yeah.
All this unique stuff,
Absolutely.
it drives me insane.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Absolutely. Um, Now, Chuck, you haven't. What was your worst Super Bowl? The Super Bowl that you think was just a hard watch?
Once again, just like the last episode, Mark and I are kind of along the same wavelength to a degree. Ironically, he mentioned Chris Chandler. Worst Super Bowl I've ever seen, Super Bowl 32, Broncos Falcons. You know, now, first of all, it was a bad game because it's mostly known for Eugene Robinson tricking the night before. It
Yep.
ain't. It's not. He tricking the night before. He is mostly known for that. But then, secondly, um, Denny Green, whomever, what's the word? Gary Anderson, they deprived us of possibly of what
Yeah.
would have been the best Super Bowl because the Broncos were the defending champions, and this was Randy Moss's rookie year, and they ran roughshod. Randall Cunningham was MVP, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Chris Carter, Jake Reed, Randy
Randy
Moss.
Moss.
They had Leroy Hart, they had Robert Smith. They
Yep.
just had everybody, and they managed to lose that game because people were eagerly anticipating seeing that Broncos, the defending champions, against the Vikings and for the '98 season, but they fell short to Chris Chandler and the Falcons, and it was just a bad game because you remember. The only thing memorable about Super Bowl Media Week was Shannon Sharp and Ray Buchanan going back and forth,
Yep.
trash talking and all of that. And it just, you remember Jamal Anderson, who they had? They had Jamal Anderson. They had, was Jesse
Terrence
Tuggle still with
Mathis.
them? Yeah.
Jesse Tuggle. I think that was Jesse Tuggle's last game.
It was just a bad game. And I think I fell asleep on it because it was so bad. Now, another one that was bad, I didn't watch it. Partially, I'm not going to say protest because what can I do? It was early 2019 for the 2018 season, Patriots Rams, when the Saints just got totally shafted out of a Super Bowl trip, which they would have won. My girlfriend and I, we went to the movies that night. We didn't even bother to watch it because I was still ticked off from the NFC Championship game. But people talked about how bad it was for like the next 2 weeks.
I mean, you took my thunder because those were my two.
Wow.
The Broncos, Falcons, that game there. I could sit back, I can go back and watch this game, and it'll be like the first time I'm watching this game all over again because it was so bad. I was like, what am I watching? It was John Elway's last game. And you know how I feel about John Elway. He's one of my all-time favorite players. Even though I am a Charger fan, he's still one of my favorite players. And for him to win back-to-back, there was nothing about that game that I was like, oh, I remember that. Nothing about it except Eugene Robinson. That's all I remember from that game. Okay? Patriots, Rams, Patriots, Super Bowl 53.
You watched it?
I did watch it. It was so hard for me to watch. But at the same time, the one thing I do remember about that game was this. The mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, before the game said, we are welcoming Rams fans, which was this is not too long after they moved to LA. So the Rams were bringing 10, 15 fans to the game. And then the Patriots had been here so many times. It was like, okay, we've done this before. Why go back? We're going to win this game anyway, so why do we even have to go to Atlanta? Okay? That's an attitude that I think that they had. Can you imagine the amount of money Atlanta would have made if the Saints made it? But I think that they were afraid because if the Saints would have played here for that Super Bowl and won, Can you imagine what kind of a black eye the Falcons would have had with the Saints, their arch rival, celebrating a Super Bowl not only in their home stadium, but they were designated as the home team. So they would have brought the Lombardi Trophy into the Falcons locker room a couple of years after them blowing a lead. But Keisha Lance Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, essentially said, "We welcome all of these fans, and we are so glad it's not the Saints."
I like the pettiness, even though I'm on the wrong side of it. I like the pettiness, though. I respect it.
She actually said that, and I watched the game, and it was like this game was so hard to watch because you know me, I love offense, but I appreciate a good defensive game. This game was just boring. I mean, I understand it's defense. I understand there was a lot of defensive plays and everything. It's the only Super Bowl Tom Brady did not throw a touchdown pass. You know, I think he didn't throw a touchdown pass, but he had an interception in this game. You know, then Jared Goff on the other side. I mean, a young Jared Goff. Come on, okay, really? But I had to watch it. I was about to not watch it in protest because I was rooting for the Saints, and it would have been like really cool to have the Saints to play a Super Bowl in Atlanta with all of the Saints fans that actually live here. Because you'd be surprised how many Saints fans that live here in Atlanta. There's a lot.
Yeah,
You
a
know,
ton.
you know. Now to finish it off, to kind of wrap things up. Okay, before we get into our predictions, okay, because I need everybody's prediction before we end this. But the one thing that I want to do is there a Super Bowl memory that has nothing to do with the game itself, but it has something to do with you personally? Like anything that you were doing that was memorable or something that was around the Super Bowl that was memorable in your life. David, I'm gonna start with you. Was there anything? Because I remember you telling me there was one Super Bowl where you really didn't watch, but you were delivering pizza and you were actually like asking, people every time you made a stop, okay, who's winning this game or whatever. Tell us about
Oh
that
yeah.
story.
Well, it's not much of a story. It's just that was the Super Bowl that we just kind of talked about in '02 with the Bucks and the Raiders because
Okay.
we was living in New Orleans at the time and I was delivering pizza. And at first I told them I was gonna come in after the game, but then they called and oh, we really need you. We really need you. We real busy. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm fine. I'm gonna come in. So I came in. They had a little TV, where we can watch between deliveries. And believe it or not, it wasn't as crazy at first, but as the game progressed, it was like, okay, you need to go take this delivery. So back then, we didn't have the smartphones where you could pull it up on YouTube TV or none of that. None of that was invented at the time. And so yeah, so I had to, go to the deliveries. And then if I could hear the game, I try to stick my head in the people's house and oh, can I get a glimpse? And if I knew they was watching the game, and then it's like I had to hurry back to the store, catch another order and try to watch what I can in between. And that's pretty much the wildest, that I can remember on that night. Now it was another game, another Super Bowl. I was in the truck going to El Paso, and I had to stop at a truck stop and watch bits and pieces of. That's the game when Pittsburgh played Green Bay in the Superdome.
So
I
yeah,
kind of had
yeah,
to,
I remember that. Yeah, actually,
yeah.
that was
So
in
I didn't get.
Arlington. That was in
Oh,
Arlington.
that's in Arlington. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought that was in New Orleans, but anyway, yeah, you're right. That was in Arlington, and so that game I had to make a couple of stops at truck stops just to see what was going on. During that game. So that's pretty much answers that question there.
Okay. Mark,
Hmm.
what about you? Was there anything connected to the Super Bowl that was, a roundabout way, basically the Super Bowl playing in the background for your story?
Okay, now. Uh, I was at a party, and me and this young female left.
Okay.
And you know how it is around here.
Yeah.
Trying to find some space. We went across the bayou where I live
Okay.
now, and we were getting it on. All of a sudden, the spotlight comes on.
Oh no!
Hell, I look, and it's the sheriff. So he's like, "Come on out." I get out, and luckily, by luck, it was a buddy of mine that I went to high school with. It was his dad. He's a big Cowboys fan, and he was like, "Y'all need to get out of here. You're lucky I'm being nice because my Cowboys won." I thought
Okay.
we was gonna get in trouble, and she was embarrassed. But yeah, that's the one thing I still remember that to this day.
Okay.
Man.
Huh?
I hope you had on clothes when you stepped out of there, man.
Oh yeah.
Okay. What about you, Chuck? What was your memory?
It's kind of a long story. Not a long story, but Evening from Hell, man. The year was 2002, Buccaneers versus Raiders, man. It was a young lady I was seeing at the time. It was nothing serious. I was seeing her at the time. Same thing Dave mentioned, I hate Super Bowl parties. I didn't want to come. She just kept saying, come on, come on, come on, come on over. So I went, right? I get there. One of her cousins, a guy who was a Raiders fan, he and I I could tell he didn't like me very much. And then, all of her family was there. Now, Dana, you can probably attest to this. I'm sure the other two gentlemen can as well. In Baton Rouge at that time, I'm not sure if it's not still like this now. In Baton Rouge at that time, if you didn't walk around with gold teeth, or you didn't have your pants hanging off, or you use proper subject verb agreement when you speak, they kind of equate that to being less of a man, or
Right.
less of a man. They deem that kind of masculine. So
Right.
this cousin, he had been in and out of jail, couldn't hold a job. He was a Raiders fan. He was talking stuff. Buck's not even my team, man. I'm like, dude, they got Simeon Rice, Derek Brooks, Warren Sapp, the coach. They know all of your plays, bro. Y'all don't stand a chance, man. I said, y'all don't stand a chance. This game is over with before it even starts, right? Anyway, they start talking. They start whooping him and stuff. And then, he was like, they were talking about movies, about The Matrix, right? You like The Matrix? Right. Now they asked me. I said, I don't really care about The Matrix. Then he said, because your stupid blank don't understand what it means, and this, that, and the other, and all of that, and a boom, boom, boom.
No, he did not tell you that. He told you
he told me that.
He must not have known you very well.
Oh, I'm like, dude, when did you get to see it? I say, between which jail stint did you get to see it? You know what I mean? Because every time I look, you locked up. You need to be blind. You need to be whatever. Oh, you don't know me. You don't know me. You this, you that, you the other, whatever, and all that. You ain't no good athlete. You can't do that. Fortunately, they had a basketball goal in the backyard, right?
Okay.
So the whole family, remember the context, they think that because I'm clean cut, that I can't get raw, right? So the game was a blowout. A whole house full of people. We go in the backyard, right? We gonna play right now, right? So I say, how much you want to bet? He said, what you mean? I say, I only play for money, dog. How much money you want to bet? He said, let's put up 20, which was a lot of money in those days. So I was like, look, man. I'll do you one. Since you don't want to take the risk, I say you in between jobs, so you probably gonna have to get it from your woman if you lose. But I'll do you one better, dude. I say, look, you gonna lose, but if you score more than 3 points, I say if you score more than 3 points, I don't owe you nothing. Or if you win, obviously, and score more than 3 points, I'll owe you $40. So no risk to you, right?
Yeah.
So he gets the ball, everybody talking to him, he gonna school you, because they think I'm just some cornball, right? So he gets the ball. I halfway check him, right? I'm halfway checking him. He scores twice. He talking the whole family, yeah. So I'm like, he gets the ball the third time. I'm like, okay. I said, you can't miss now. I say, because if you miss, because we're playing make them take them. I say, if you miss, you're not getting the effing ball back if you miss, So sure enough, I got down on him. He tried to drive around me. I ripped him. Then I run off like 6, 7 in a row. Boom, boom, boom. With an array of moves, jab steps, crossovers, reverse pivots, up and unders, just everything. So now he's upset and he starts trying to roughhouse now. Now, you and I, we played, because you don't know how we do it. I'm from the bottom to the top or whatever. I went to high school with all them cats, man. I said, I'm more known down there than you are, man. Come on now. So he starts roughhousing, we basically playing prison ball now, right?
Right.
So I beat him. I beat him 12-2. And you know me,
right.
I'm gonna give you play by play while I'm doing it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna let you know what's happening while I'm doing it to you. So by now he's seething mad, right? Game over with. I was like, man, get that 20. I said, I know you ain't got no job. So I asked this woman, I'm like, man, I know you got $20 in your purse. Let me get that, right? So he charges me ready to fight, right? He swung, he hit me in my face the first time. Then, I'm blocking him. But a lot of people, when they fight, when they throw that overhead right, they pick that back leg up and it comes forward.
Yeah.
When they punch, they don't punch through. So I waited till he did it again. So when he did it again, I slipped to the left, I slipped to my right, and when he did it, he was like this, and all of this was wide open. And then I just came right over the top with a right hand, that bone right behind your ear.
Yeah.
Bam, right there. Down he goes face first into the concrete. Then his mama, the girl's mama and her, everybody is mad now because I've gotten the best of the dude. See, it was all fun and
You got the
games.
best of the dude twice.
Yeah, it was all fun and games when they thought he was going to punk me.
Right.
So then next thing you know, she's like, long story short, the next day, she was like, well, I told you don't go out there or whatever. And you know me. You know me. If you want to guarantee I do something, tell me I better not do something. If you want to guarantee I do something, tell me I better not do it. You could consider it done, right? So she was like, well, yeah, because you want to be with me, you got to do what I say and all that. I say, I ain't none of your.
Oh no.
I ain't none of your the clean version. I ain't none of your punk blank daddy who sit in the back. In his own room with his testicles taped up. Man, I ain't none of your daddy, bro. You know what I mean? So I ain't none of your daddy, because me, I ain't none of your daddy. You don't run nothing over here, you don't run nothing with me. So pretty much we were just seeing each other. It wasn't nothing serious. She say, well, you gotta do that. I say, it's some things that you do well. Not trying to get too vivid, but it's some things that you do well. But man, it ain't nothing I can't do without. Now I could get somebody else to do that. You know what I mean? So basically, that's my Super Bowl story. So
Well, mine isn't really as good as that one because that's a classic. I have actually two. Okay, both of them relatively short. First one, when the Saints beat the Colts. Okay. I look at that Super Bowl in two different perspectives. One, the whole time I was just thinking how my grandfather would be reacting if he was alive. My grandfather, longtime Saints fan. In fact, he went to the very first Saints game in 1967 at Tulane Stadium when John Gilliam returned the kickoff for a touchdown in the Saints' very first game. He's always said that was the greatest moment, the second greatest moment of his life, right after him getting married. Okay, now here's a man who served in World War II. Was a principal. He was the first black principal of a public school after the school was integrated in Iberia Parish. Long, illustrious life. But he said when John Gilliam returned that kickoff for a touchdown against the Rams in 67, that was the greatest moment of his life, the second greatest moment of his life. I thought about him. Okay, especially when Tracy Porter picked off that pass, that I could just hear him in my mind's eye. I could just hear him just absolutely going berserk. But I had a really good substitute for that game, which was my wife's dad, Walter Augustine. He was a longtime Saints fan. In fact, he had a bottle of I think it was whiskey that he bought like in 1980. That he had on the shelf He said, I will only open it if the Saints win. And sure enough, I was sitting there, he and I think a couple other people were watching the game. I was in his den watching the game with him. And he was like basically on the verge of tears because he thought that he would never see the day to see the Saints win a Super Bowl. And I thought that was like really cool thing because, Mr. Walter, we call him Mac. Mac was like he's this really funny, gregarious guy, but he was so moved to tears that it was like it almost brought me to tears to see him so happy to see the Saints win. The other one is a little shorter story. This is Super Bowl 23. Bengals 49ers, okay? The morning of the Super Bowl, right? Me and my dad go to church. We come back home, we turn the TV on, right? TV doesn't work. TV went out, okay? And we were like, and this is in the days where we had like this old time cabinet floor model television, one of those little ones that sat on the floor that looked like a cabinet. Okay. Well, it went out. Like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? This is Super Bowl. What are we gonna do? My dad was like, don't worry about it, I'll be right back. He leaves out. Now, my dad at the time worked at Lowe's. Okay. And Lowe's sold televisions at that time. So he go to Lowe's, buy this brand new 32-inch TV. Okay, brings it back and he said, Dana, come help me outside. I need your help with something. And I'm just trying to figure out, okay, am I gonna watch the game in my mom's room or shall I go up the street to David's house and watch the game? I don't know. So sure enough, I go outside, brand new Magnavox 32-inch TV. I'm like, oh yeah, it's on now. So brought it inside, set it up. So a crisis was averted. When my dad came back with a brand new Magnavox 32-inch TV to watch one of the best Super Bowls between the 49ers and the Bengals. So that's my Super Bowl story.
What's up, man? Classic Super Bowl too. You were rewarded because that was my favorite. That's my favorite Super Bowl. Like as far as like from a competitive standpoint, not involving my team. That's my favorite one.
All right. Now, before we wrap things up, is there anything else that you guys want to add? Like, for example, like favorite halftime show. I really don't watch the Super Bowl halftime show like talking about. I just don't. But it's kind of like it gives you like a pulse or like a what's going on in pop culture or pop music. Me, I haven't really paid too much attention to the Super Bowl halftime show, to be honest. Is there anything like on that level? Is there anything you guys want to add that we didn't cover while talking?
Pessimist. I love when the Super Bowl used to start in the afternoon because it wouldn't get dark until like the second half. And I also love when the halftime show they may put like a PWI band in with the girls twirling the batons and all that. And the halftime was like maybe, like the normal time as in a normal game, when it was still a game as opposed to an event. Because now it's more so an event now as opposed to a game. To your point, it's like a game that takes place during an event, Whereas back then it was still just a game. And I think all four of us appreciated it more. Then you didn't need the Super Bowl parties, and it was just football. It was about the football, and it just seems like football. The football is almost nowadays like a supporting cast, so to speak, in the show, as opposed to the main thing.
All right, okay. Anything else? Anything else you guys want to add to that? So
I did like Prince's halftime show.
That was a really good halftime show. That was like a lot of people say that was like the greatest halftime show ever with Prince and performing in Miami, and singing Purple Rain in the rain. That was a really, really good halftime show. A lot of people, like I said, consider that the best halftime show ever.
And one thing that
go ahead, Dave. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dave. My bad.
No, it's all good. I was gonna say one thing that stuck out to me was the year when Whitney Houston did the Star Spangled Banner.
Yeah, that was a really, yeah. A lot of people say that's the greatest rendition of the national anthem ever. I tend to disagree. I think that the Marvin Gaye's version at the '83 NBA All-Star game was better.
There you go. Yes, sir.
You know,
Yes, sir.
The Marvin Gaye version in the '83 NBA All-Star game was the best rendition because how many people have enough talent to make the national anthem sexy? Because if you listen to that game, you listen to that song by Marvin Gaye, that was like the best national anthem ever. Better
He
than Whitney
freaked it.
Houston, better than Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock. It was the best ever.
Right.
He freaked it, man. He freaked it because I still remember watching the '83 All-Star game and Gus Williams was lined up with all of the Western Conference All-Stars, and he and George Gervin were looking at each other like, man, damn, you know. So yeah, this was you know.
Okay, we're gonna wrap things up with this. Okay, what's your
Girls.
Super Bowl prediction? Who do you
Girls.
think's gonna win? Why?
Girls. I hope I'm on.
Dave, I'm gonna go with you first. Who you think?
I'm gonna have to go with Seattle on this one. Because, the Patriots, yes, they had a good run, but, I'm going to have to stick with in agreement with what people are saying, how they had the benefit of a relatively weak schedule. Now, of course, they had to play their conference and their division. They had to play their NFC division, which is the West, which was kind of weak, kind of.
No, actually, they played the South. They played the Saints.
Yeah, the South. That's right. The South. That's right. I was thinking the South. I said the West. But yeah, they played the South, then they played their division, and then the rest of the teams were last place teams. But however, Drake May still had a good season this year, all things considered. But I just think Seattle is too much for him, in my opinion.
Okay. Mark, what do you think? What's your Super Bowl prediction?
Well, and I guess I should have mentioned this earlier. I usually always go with the NFC team.
Okay.
So, but watching these teams play, Seattle, which they're comparing their defense to the Legion of Doom, the Legion of Boom. I like the way they play. Every head on a hat. They're very aggressive. Compared to and I guess the Patriots, they haven't impressed me as far as the way Seattle looks. Like I think I watched one game with Seattle and I was like, there's nobody who's gonna beat those guys.
Okay. Chuck, what do you think?
Seen a lot because I don't watch as much these days. But from the little bit I've seen, I'd have to go with Seattle as long as Donald doesn't revert back to historical form, like his career up to this point. If he can play a solid game and because of the defense that they have, just don't lose the game, then that should be enough to allow the defense to win it.
And for me, I think it's going to be. I think Seattle's going to win this game. Just like Mark says, he always roots for the NFC. I'm the opposite. I always choose the AFC unless it's the Patriots. I always root for the AFC team unless it's the Patriots. If it's the Patriots, I'm not rooting for them at all. Don't care. With that said, putting that aside, I would go with Seattle because I just think that, and to use a phrase that I use all the time when me and David talk, the Patriots came on too soon, too fast. They went too far, too fast. Drake May's in his second year. Vrabel's in his first year as head coach. They came off back-to-back 4-13 seasons. They weren't supposed to be here. Make the playoff, okay, well, I can give you that. But the Super Bowl, no. I just don't see it. Drake May had the benefit of not only they had like a really easy playoff run. I know one of those teams was against us, but the Chargers' offensive line was a complete shambles. Okay, and all you had to do is just blitz, constantly blitz Herbert, Justin Herbert, just blitz him and get him out of his rhythm. And you guys, our defense did the best that we could, but we can't score. Then they were able to continue, get through Denver with a backup quarterback, in the
And the
snow,
Texans.
and the Texans. Oh my God, you know, Stroud. No one can sit down there and tell me anything about Stroud ever again. No, I don't care. He will never live that game down. He looked absolutely pathetic. And against Denver, going up against a backup quarterback who didn't throw a pass in 3 years. I mean, come on, you can't get a much better run to a Super Bowl than that. And I think it's going to come back to beat them. My final score: Seahawks 27, Patriots 17.
Okay. Quick question. You don't think that do you think that the Patriots' success, because Sean Payton went Sean Payton in that game from what
Yeah,
I'm
he
hearing.
did. He did.
He just always finds a way, once again, trying to be too damn smart instead of just winning the game. But anyway, do you think that they would have gotten there if the normal cast of characters in the playoffs would have been there?
I think it would have been
Mahomes,
a better game.
Jackson, you think they would have gotten to this point because
No, I mean, if the
you know.
Chiefs were the Chiefs, and if you would have had the Ravens there, it would have been I think it would have been a better playoffs. But there's no way that I could see the Patriots getting through either one of those teams. It was just the perfect opening for them, to get to the Super Bowl. But I just don't think that the Patriots have enough now. Again, we're talking about the Patriots here, and Belichick ain't there, but you have a Belichick disciple in Vrabel. Is that going to be enough? In this case, I don't think it will be. I really don't. I think that the Seahawks are playing too well right now. They were in a very good division in the NFC West, with the 49ers being the 49ers and the Rams being good. Of course, you really can't say much about the Cardinals, but those two teams, along with they was in constant competition with each other the whole year, as opposed to the Patriots. They had to deal with the Jets, which enough said. You had to deal with the Dolphins, again, enough said. And you had to deal with Buffalo, and Buffalo's going to find a way to blow it, which they did. They should have lost to Jacksonville, to be honest. But the Patriots just had an easier road to the Super Bowl than the Seahawks did, and I think that with the Seahawks being tested the way they were during the season, during the regular season, and getting to this point, and they have the inside track of winning the Lombardi Trophy. But to your point, Chuck, can you see Sam Darnold reverting back to Sam Darnold of the Jets or Sam Darnold of the Panthers? You just have to see.
Yeah, just have to wait and see. That's it.
Well, I know Seattle, they got hot late.
Yeah.
And been riding that they've been riding that out, and they look far better team than what I saw in the Patriots.
Okay, gentlemen, I really appreciate you guys coming on, and we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to close things out right here on the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. I want to thank once again my partners in crime for joining us, and we'll be back right after these messages.
And that will do it for this edition of the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, this podcast comes to you from the Bill King Memorial Studio in the sports wing of TM4 Enterprises, located in suburban Atlanta in the shadow of Stone Mountain. Once again, don't forget to like and subscribe this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It really help us out, help out the algorithm and all that sort of thing. And please, as always, if you want to write to us, please write to us at historically.speaking.sports@gmail.com. Once again, that email address, historically.speaking.sports@gmail.com. And also subscribe to us so you get new episodes whenever they are released. And as always, tell people about us, please. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers, tell your neighbors. Hell, tell a passerby on the street if you think that they like sports history. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history. But as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.